Hello, welcome to this posting of our Teaching Commons blog. My name is Brian Nairn. I'm one of the educational developers with the Teaching Commons, and I'm very excited to share this space today with Steve Gennaro, who's one of the faculty members at York University, who's very heavily involved with e-learning and online teaching and those initiatives at York. Steve and I are going to have a conversation today about some of the initiatives that he is putting forward. At this point, I'd actually like to turn it over to Steve to introduce himself.
Thanks, Brian. Brian's correct. I teach at York and have for close to 2 decades in liberal arts professional studies, mostly in humanities and communications.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. So at this point, why don't you just tell me a little bit about some of the online initiatives that you're currently working on at York?
Well, great. Thanks. I think most of the work has been happening. I'm just going to share my screen if I can here. Most of the work that's been happening has been happening through the Associate Dean of Teaching and Learning and the Dean's Office with this faculty resources website that we've been working on, Going Digital. And so you can see up here, it's goingdigital.labs.yorku.ca. And we can add a link to this with the blog post. And here, if we scroll down for the faculty resources, a lot of great work has gone in from the Associate Dean of Teaching and Learning and the team towards coming up with best practices and selecting course material, trying to answer a lot of the questions that faculty have been having. I'm sure the Teaching Commons, you've been getting asked a lot of similar questions. And we've also been providing resources for e-services training, a series of templates to help to review and to download, and if you want to set up your course, how to set it up, maybe some ideas on how to build syllabus or even Moodle sites themselves or e-class sites themselves entirely, and in some TA training, which was certainly will take us back to the Teaching Commons and a project that we did together where we came up with a series of short YouTube videos to help TAs in their learning as well, and with some resources that link out to other spaces where people can go for help, including the great work that's been happening with the Going Remote website and the Teaching Commons itself. But the biggest project that I personally have probably been involved with, although I've helped to the Associate Dean of Teaching and Learning gather and create this space, has been this section here, the training video section. And if we click on that section, what we'll notice is I'm just going to scroll briefly and then I'll close it down and we can talk a little bit about it. What you'll notice here is there's a whole series of YouTube videos in varying lengths, spanning multiple days, going back several months of what we've been calling Moodle Retreats. Some of them being single day or just maybe in an afternoon, going through things like creating quizzes and tests. And some of them, if I scroll down even further, what you'll notice is there's like a 5-day retreat for how to teach small seminar courses. Or and if I scroll down, there was another 5-day retreat for how to teach large lecture courses that involve a teaching team. And we go all the way back even to the very early days of the spring, where it was how do I build a Moodle course period. And so the Moodle Retreats, I think, were the first big project that I was involved with the Associate Dean of Teaching and Learning, and to help LAPS faculty transition to online learning in response to COVID-19 in the spring of 2020, and then through the summer to help build their courses for the summer. And they were met with some positive response, and they've continued throughout the summer and even into the fall.
Great. How applicable is some of this work to broader faculty outside of LAPS?
Well, that's a great question. I think that one of the things we tried to do in designing these Moodle retreats was to make them applicable to anybody who'd be teaching at York. I mean, LAPS is the largest faculty at the university. It's also the largest liberal arts faculty in the entire country. So we have a large variety of faculty and courses and disciplines that we are working with, departments and programs. So, for example, some of the seminar retreats that I teach, I have people who are teaching in administrative studies or who are teaching in English. And those are very different if you're doing economics or if you're doing humanities. And so to try and design learning sessions or training sessions for faculty that meet the needs of all of those is a little bit complicated. And so we've tried to keep things at a more generic level of this is how you would access the technology and how you would use it. And then we tried to provide multiple examples to help faculty in their own specific way adapt those technology to their own specific classrooms and their unique experiences in their own classrooms.
Great. Yeah, there's so much diversity within LAPS that it's almost impossible to create something that's not generalizable outside of that faculty.
I mean, ideally, the resources, if they're good, and I hope they are. We certainly tried, but if they meet their objective, they would be usable for all faculty, or at least maybe not in their entirety. But I always say, if you take a course or if you go to a webinar, you may not learn everything, and it may not be directly applicable to you. But is there one thing you can take away from that? So hopefully in each of the retreats that we did, or in each of the resources you might find if you went to the Going Digital website, or if you go to the Going Remote website, hopefully there's one thing you can take out of every space that you go to help you as a faculty member grow a little bit and help develop maybe a course that is really focused on student engagement and student success.
Right. It's, you're trying to remember that, good pedagogy is good pedagogy, no matter if it's online, face-to-face, from science to humanities, right? So that's
Absolutely.
great to keep in mind.
And it's always changing too, right? That not only is, so what worked yesterday hopefully will work tomorrow. I mean, that would be good pedagogy, always works ideally, but sometimes, the parameters that we're working within change, the environment we're working within changes. And so there's a level of adaptability that we want to be there. Online teaching and learning asks us to continue to adapt ourselves as we're going, have some level of flexibility, and to be open to that flexibility. So hopefully the Moodle retreats that people have attended have aided them with that. But even if someone was to come and watch the video from another faculty, maybe there's a little trick in there that they could take and in adapting what I've tried to put forward to their own course. Again, it's all about adaptability, whether it's the instructor, the materials, the student experience. And so we're always, in conjunction with each other, trying to work together to create the best balance inside of our classrooms, because that's really what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve a level of homeostasis, of real balance between course objectives and learning objectives and learner experience, and and try to balance out all of these needs within the same space, so that we can deliver the course material to our students, that we can create a space where they come engaged with that course material, right? And at the same time, where we can help facilitate the growth of their learning experience and their knowledge and their knowledges. And to do that requires there's a lot of moving parts. So we're always working to achieve balance, and adaptability is really key to that.
That's great. So for someone who's visiting this website for the very first time, do you recommend going through the Moodle eClass type of resources initially, or is there another sort of starting off jumping point that might be helpful as well?
Yeah, I think it really depends on sort of where you are in your educational journey, right? We're all in different spaces. And if I was coming to the site and I hadn't started building my eClass or my Moodle page yet for my students, I mean, there's a lot I would start at a different spot than if I was coming and I'd already been teaching on Moodle, let's say for 6 months or for 6 years. I might be coming looking for a specific help with a specific resource. Like someone might have said, oh, if you go to Going Digital, you can learn about how to build a grade book. Oh, I need to know. So I might go directly to that. Or I might come with a more open thing of, I'm not really sure how to teach online. Where do I begin, right? So there's just like coming to the Teaching Commons website, although, yeah, yours is a little bit more focused in really like, sort of here are courses that we offer, and here are webinars that you can go to and go back and look at. And here is our platform and our objective of what we do. And here are ed developers and how they can help you. Like it's nicely structured like that. Going Digital is a little bit more like an encyclopedia of resource. So when you come to the encyclopedia, it really depends on what you want to look up. And then you kind of find your way through that. The training videos can be very helpful. I certainly hope they are. But I mean, they're also ongoing. Like we're doing more of these retreats. So during the month of October, every Friday in the afternoon, from 2:30 to 3:30, I've been running single-hour retreats, looking specifically at evaluation, because evaluation, right now we're in the midterm stage for fall courses, or we're in maybe the early evaluation stage for year-long courses that are fall, winter. And so we've been going over some different strategies of how might we evaluate students, and what would best practice look like, what is good pedagogy, and how can we use the technology to support that. At the same time, in November, I believe we'll probably keep those open And it will be a little bit more of Q&A. So I'm going to try to be available to faculty who have specific questions. But the retreats I found have been most successful when when faculty who become students as learners, when they come to the retreats themselves, try it out real time with me, and then go off and explore it, but have the videos to come back to work themselves through. Learning by doing is a great way of learning. And so whether you come to the retreat and start there, or you go to the videos, they're designed in such a way that you have a screen open in front of you, being your e-class or your Moodle. And as you work through the retreat or watch the retreat, you're clicking along and doing at the same time. That's really what those are about. So if you want to use those as a resource, it's great. But it's really about clicking at the same time and doing at the same time. I joke it's like academic paint night, right? You come and you have like a blank canvas, which might be your Moodle, and I have a blank canvas, which is my Moodle. And then I begin to paint in my Moodle, and you begin to paint in your Moodle at the same time, or your e-class at the same time. They don't necessarily look the same, but step by step, we get you to the end where you hopefully have something that you can feel happy about, that you want to share with others.
Great. Yeah. So it sounds like there's a lot for everybody depending on where you're starting from. So, whether you're starting to build your course or if you already have that set up, there's plenty of information available no matter where your starting point is. And I actually think you may have answered my next question was going to be, what's have a number one tip or your biggest takeaway that you could give. But I almost wonder if that learning by doing, and kind of taking the time to actually work through those problems. It's easy to read the theory and be like, oh yeah, I know, here's a documentation. Okay, this is what I need to do, versus actually, having a screen and a video open while working through it in real time. Is there any other sort of, kind of, I guess, as we think about wrapping up this conversation, what's your number one takeaway for faculty when they're kind of working through this online process?
I think you're 100% right in what you just said. And that is the real challenge in creating these types of retreats, and in doing the retreats, even as a learner, is finding the right balance between pedagogical theory and pedagogical practice. And that's a real challenge in designing and also in learning itself. Now, in terms of what advice I give people, I try to keep it simple, and that is, you're going to fail. You're going to fail an awful lot. I mean, that's when people say, what experience do you have as a learning designer? I say, well, I have I have decades of failure as an online teacher. I've been teaching online for years, failing and just endlessly. And so I always try to tell people to sort of get comfortable with that little bit of discomfort that comes from making mistakes and in having all types of obstacles brought forward to you that you haven't seen before, and just be open to that process. Through failure, we learn. And we learn our best through failure, but also as academics, intellectuals, instructors at the university are often a little bit nervous about the vulnerability that comes from exposing their intellectuals, instructors teaching at the university. We often become a little bit concerned about exposure, right? About exposing our failures for others to see, and somehow not being the expert, because we're used to being experts, and that's kind of how we were trained and how we were hired to be specialized knowledge experts, subject area experts, subject matter experts. And there's sometimes a fear of exposing the vulnerability that comes from showing that we don't have all the answers. What I found, though, from my experience in teaching online for many years, is that the humility that comes from sharing those experiences with your students actually goes a long way to building community, which is essential for the online learning space. So by demonstrating that it's a learning process for you as the instructor who's in this online learning space, working for your students to give them the best possible learning environment possible, even if it means that you fail and you make mistakes, when you share with them those failures, the students actually become more connected to you. And in doing so, become more connected to the course, and thereby actually have a higher chance of succeeding. So that's what I would say. Become comfortable with failure as best you can, and don't be afraid to share the experience of your growth in building the site or using the technology with your students.
That's great. That's great advice, for for everyone to listen. It was easier said than done, I know, but it's definitely a great mindset to have going into this. So anyway, I think we need to wrap it up there. This conversation could go for much longer than I think people are wanting to sit down and listen to it at this moment. So maybe in the future we can carry on this conversation with a part 2 as we move forward. But thank you very much, Steve Gennaro, for your time and for all of the effort and things you're doing in the online teaching world at York University.
Thanks, Brian.